Yo, welcome to the show, College Football Talks. I'm your host, Kenny the SC, and in today's episode, we'll be talking about South Carolina's upset win over the 15th ranked Auburn Tigers, breaking down the game of the year between the second-ranked Alabama Crimson Tide and the third-ranked Georgia Bulldogs. And we will also be discussing the possibility of having two SEC teams in the playoff this year. Jumping right into it, Auburn continued to struggle with the loss to South Carolina last week. Some key stat lines for the game was Bo Nix threw for 272 yards, 1 touchdown, and 3 interceptions, and Tank Bigsby ran for 116 yards, 1 touchdown on 16 carries. Key stat lines for South Carolina was Colin Hill threw for 144 yards, 1 touchdown, and 1 interception. And running back Harris had 83 yards rushing, 2 touchdowns on 25 carries. Now, Auburn was winning in all aspects of the game early in the first half, and it seemed as if they were going to cakewalk to victory. After Muschamp had made the proper adjustments, Auburn's offense was basically held ineffective. The Gamecock defense was able to pressure Nix into forcing bad throws and caused interceptions. The Tigers' offense just seemed dysfunctional last weekend. This was shown all throughout the game, including the argument that Bo Nix and wide receiver Seth Williams got into on the sideline. The Auburn offense had 3 red zone trips, and it all led to 3 field goals. Now, the upside for Auburn is that they have a very bright future in freshman running back Tank Bigsby, who has been quite frankly carrying the Auburn offense ever since the Georgia game. Auburn is going to need to look some serious adjustments after getting off to a 2-2 start. This team should in reality be 1-3 and could easily be 0-4 right now. They have not been executing on offense and defense, and it has been shown to give up big plays. Now, for South Carolina, they were able to capitalize on turnovers that the defense forced. All 3 of the interceptions led to touchdowns and ultimately helped South Carolina get the win. They controlled the line of scrimmage and took advantage of opportunities that Auburn gave them. Will Muschamp had his team ready and prepared for the game. South Carolina also had big playmakers step up in the game. One that stood out was J.C. Horn. He was matched up on Seth Williams the whole game, and you can tell that Horn was getting into Seth Williams' head. Williams was continually targeted by Nix, yet Horn only held him to 4 catches for 74 yards, and most of that yardage came from a 50-50 ball that Bo Nix just threw up. And on top of that, J.C. Horn had 2 interceptions and 4 pass breakups to go along with it. South Carolina is a team that can definitely shake things up in the East, and they have already proven that they can compete. Games between Georgia and LSU next week are definitely ones to keep an eye on. Jumping into the next topic, with the most highly anticipated matchup of the year, Alabama beats Georgia with a great second half performance. Some key stat lines for Alabama were Mac Jones threw for 417 yards, 4 touchdowns, and 1 interception. Najee Harris ran for 152 yards, 1 touchdown on 31 carries. Devontae Smith had 11 receptions, 167 yards, and 2 receiving touchdowns. Some key stat lines for Georgia were Stetson Bennett had 269 yards through the air, 2 touchdowns and 3 interceptions, and running back James Cook had 145 all-purpose yards. This game was a real test for the Bulldogs. Though the teams got off to a slow start, throwing back-to-back interceptions on their first drive, Georgia and Alabama came out exchanging punches from the very beginning. Alabama hit a field goal to bring the lead down to 4 at the end of the second quarter, and Georgia seemed to have the control of the game and momentum headed into halftime. Some key takeaways for Alabama were Alabama came out in the second half firing on all cylinders. Alabama was able to run the ball and give the ball to Najee Harris very effectively. This was something that I predicted UGA to suppress and prevent from happening, but in fact it was the exact opposite. Georgia was never able to really put enough pressure on Mac Jones. He seemed as comfortable as ever in the pocket, and when he needed to make a play, he always seemed to find open receivers. This leads me to my other takeaway, which is that the Alabama receivers were always getting separation from the Georgia corners. Alabama just had too many playmakers that Georgia could not match up with. If you had Mechie covered, then Devontae Smith would get the ball. And if Devontae was covered, then Jalen Waddle would get the ball. Alabama just had too many weapons on the outside. And Mac Jones did a great job of spreading the ball around to keep Georgia guessing. Alabama's defense played phenomenal as well, especially in the second half. Though they did give up some big plays that had no business happening, like that James Cook 82-yard touchdown reception where the linebacker just underplayed the ball and it really should have been an interception. But also, the defensive line was doing their job by knocking down Stetson Bennett's passes on a consistent basis in the first and second half. In the second half, the defense did not let Georgia score a single point, and they were constantly pressuring Bennett and made him start to force the ball into tight windows, and he threw 2 interceptions. Some key takeaways from Georgia was Georgia came out strong in the first half and was able to move the ball down the field on the Alabama defense. Their triumph was very short-lived, and their defense gave up big plays in the second half, and the offense turned the ball over. Though Georgia did have some big plays in the first half, and they were able to take advantage of matchups such as getting James Cook on a linebacker or getting Jermaine Burton against the safety. After that, they were unable to get the ball to their playmakers. Stetson Bennett and the Georgia offense made costly mistakes in the second half, like the 2 interceptions that were thrown, and both of those interceptions led to Alabama touchdowns. The defense, which is made a main for themselves by keeping opponents out of the end zone, was not able to execute and get Bama off the field. Georgia also showed that they may have trouble playing against high-powered offenses, such as a team like Florida, in the near future. So how did this entire game play out? The game played out exactly how I expected it to. I predicted the score to be 38-27 Alabama, and the actual score was not too far off, being 41-24. Georgia was able to keep it close by making big plays, getting off the field on third down, but Mac Jones and company were just too much for the Georgia defense to handle. Alabama has too many playmakers, and it is going to be hard for many teams to stop them from scoring. There are only a few teams in the country that I can see matching up with Bama in offense, and that is Clemson and possibly Ohio State. On to a more serious question that really seems to be getting asked every single year is, could 2 SEC teams make the playoff? Well, in theory, yes, 2 teams could most definitely. There are many scenarios that would take me an entire day for me to go through for this to happen. But in order for this to happen, the SEC champion, presumably Alabama, would make the playoff at like a number 1 or number 2 spot. And the second place team from the West, which right now is Texas A&M, would have to win out the rest of the year in a convincing fashion in order for them to make the playoff spot. Another scenario we could see is if we have a 1-loss Georgia or Florida team that wins out, and one of those teams beat an undefeated Alabama team in the SEC championship game. Would you still put Alabama in the playoff? See, many people could still consider them to be one of the best 4 teams, but others may argue that they're taking a spot away from other teams that actually earned it. See, that's the thing about college football. It is very unpredictable, which is why so many people love to watch it, and which is why I love the new playoff format that was added. I also think that the playoff has its positives and negatives. The playoff opens up a door for more teams and competition, but it's also very controversial on how the teams are picked for the spots, and many deserving teams could get snubbed from a spot for a bigger and more known program. Examples of this could include 2014 TCU or 2016 Penn State. The playoff will be an interesting topic for the rest of the year, especially with the teams playing in conference. And I am very excited to see how this entire season will play out. Well, thanks for watching. That's going to conclude today's video. Don't forget to leave a like, comment down below, and most importantly, subscribe. I will see y'all next time.